How do you reconcile with people who don't believe in the impacts of climate change?
I tell them they're going to die, and I tell them their kids are going to burn, and it's going to be their fault. Yeah. That's pretty much it. So my girlfriend doesn't compost. She recycles, but she doesn't compost. And I have been nagging her about it for days now, and she's getting a compost bin. So that's good. I don't know. I also don't want to be too militant about it, just because. And it's shutting this down. I don't want to be too militant about it because I think it tends to push people away. I think people tend to get defensive when they feel attacked, but at the same time, they need to understand that this is a very real threat to their lives and their future generations. I'm environmentally conscious in a number of ways. I try to cut down my emissions in terms of transportation. I take the bus or I walk when I can. I recycle, I compost. I think my greatest asset is my pushiness, so I push everyone around me. I borderline harass everyone around me to recycle and compost. And I think I've made some leeway in certain areas, like at home. My family's used to recycling but not composting. But food waste is a huge issue, so I think I've made some progress there. Can't say I'm perfect. I definitely have more processed stuff than I should. But yeah, I think that's... And also I try to reflect it in my reporting, and I try to prioritize it in my reporting, which is, I think, aside from my pushiness, the greatest asset that I have for creating change. If you are someone who's living check to check, and you have very little free time for yourself, and you're worried about taking care of your family, maybe composting and recycling is not something that's at the top of your priority list. And when you hear something like, we need to stop ourselves from getting 1.5 Celsius degrees higher than pre-industrial levels, that means jack shit to you. So I think as journalists, our power is in our storytelling and in presenting compelling stories to the public and helping them connect with these stories. And also holding people accountable that aren't people in positions of power that aren't doing what they need to do. People who own golf courses who say that climate change isn't real but apply for permits to build huge walls to stop water from overflowing their resorts because sea levels are rising. I think things like that are where we should be focusing our efforts. So I definitely think that in certain countries, especially that are much more reliant on agriculture, they feel the pain of climate change much more acutely, just because their livelihood is directly tied to the environment, and that's always been not the most stable thing, right? But now it's they're just in serious danger of losing their livelihood, so they take it more seriously.
How do you apply non-biased reporting to scientific or climate change issues?
Hesitantly, I would say. Not because I want to be biased with climate change, just because I think for a long time in covering climate change, especially in the early days when the science wasn't as conclusive as it is today, I think the compulsion was to, especially in relation to TV news, have two people opposite each other, on the TV, you have the anchor in the middle, and then two people, and one person says climate change is real, and the other person says climate change isn't real. But that creates a false equivalency in people's heads that these two ideas hold equal merit, and we know today that that's not necessarily the case. So people who don't believe in climate change are still around. They exist. I'm not going to pretend they don't exist in my coverage, and I'm not going to pretend that sometimes the science is not entirely conclusive, but there's overwhelming evidence that climate change is a real risk existentially to all people, and that's what I have to focus on.
Does the impact of an individual matter when it comes to climate change?
I think so, for sure. Without a doubt, absolutely. It's a fact that an overwhelming majority of emissions today are caused by massive corporations. So in seeing things that way, it's easy to think that individuals don't have an impact. But the fact of the matter is that things only change when there's a sea change in terms of public support. So in order for us as a nation and us as a world to start considering this a priority, we also have to first consider it a priority in our individual lives. Things don't change on a massive scale until we all accept that it's an important part of our future together. And so maybe if you don't recycle, you feel like you're not making a huge difference, or that the trash that you're tossing into the ocean is very small relative to the trash that other people are tossing into the ocean. But I think you're also standing in the way of creating a larger change.